Now we can define our own custom error types. I have a struct status error, and this implements error interface as it has a method error and returns a string which is required by an error interface. If you go through the program, we have a function login and get data which takes in UID, password and a file. So I try to log in, and this function I just deliberately threw an error that login failed. In such case, it will return a status error with invalid login, and the value of invalid login would be 1, and then not found would be 2. If login was successful, we'll try to get data. If you're not able to, then also I will return an error of type status error with a status and message. So if you observe, the return type here is error, and I didn't use a status error. If let's say I have another custom type, so I want to return that custom error instead of status error when you couldn't get the data properly. Here I restricted it to be status error. This will not allow me to return other type of errors. If I give return type as error, this will be generic, and anything that implements error interface can be returned. So let's try to execute this. When I tried to log in, the login failed. We got an error. We tried to print that. Println will internally call error function, where I tried to print the status and the message. You can see status is 1, invalid credentials for user and the user ID. Let's return nil from login. So we'll get an error while calling get data, and that will be file not found. See, status is to file error.txt not found. Next point to note is that if you are using your own error type, be sure you don't return an uninitialized instance. Here I created an instance of type a status error, and I tried to return that. If the flag is false, I tried to return an uninitialized instance. So I tried to call a generate error with flag as true and flag as false. You can see both are true. If you know the concept of interfaces, for interface to be nil, both the type and the value must be nil. But in here status error, the type is not a nil. You also know the zero value of a struct is not a zero. It is the zero values of the fields that it contains. What are the solutions for this? Try to initialize the variable of type error, and because it's an interface, when you don't initialize it, it is a nil value. First one is true and the second one would be false. The second method would be, instead of using a variable, directly return that. Return status, otherwise return nil. First one is true, the second one will be false. Let's talk about wrapping errors. It means preserving an error while adding additional information. In here I have additional information, and I try to wrap error. And series of these wrapped errors are called error chain. We use a verb percentile w in error f function for wrapping errors. So in the function here, I try to open the file. If there is any error, I try to return that. So let's check if error is nil or not. I'm trying to print it. If you want the unwrapped error, that is, I don't want this additional information or statements, then there is a function in errors package which is unwrap, and that will only have this error. So here is a function, we'll pass the error to that. We'll check if it's nil or not. If not, then I will print it. So the first println will print the additional information, but then in the second one we unwrapped this error and tried to print only that one. Errors, you can also wrap custom defined errors, but you should have a unwrapped function written to that. So previously we have seen a status error. Let's add another field error. Now let's write a unwrap method. Now let's try to unwrap that error here. We have seen type assertions previously, so I use that to get X. When I call get data, I returned file not found, right? So that's what I have assigned to error. So while unwrapping, I will get that statement. That's how you can wrap and unwrap custom errors. Next thing I want to talk about is unwrapping with differ. If you observe, all the error statements look the same. We are just duplicating it. Instead of that, I can use differ, which will be executed after return, and assign this statement to error. What I mean is differ. You can see undefined error. Since this differ will be executed after return, that means I'm using the returned values. I need to have name for that. So give the names here. I need not want anything for string, just the error. And now you can see it looks good. For testing purpose, let's just return a error here. Yeah, let's call the function. You can see in do some things, error in do thing one. Yeah, that's about using differ. Next, let's look at is and as.